There is no peace in a man who bows to madness, no honor in the one who calls poison his wine, drinks it slowly, and whispers the word love as it kills him. The modern man is not destroyed by war, famine, or fire. He is destroyed by a smile, a kiss, a soft voice that wraps around his spine like a snake and teaches him to enjoy the constriction. And no one weeps for him, because he agreed to die quietly. Marcus Aurelius never begged. He ruled. He did not chase storms to feel alive. He mastered them. And he left behind warnings, not poems, not comfort, warnings. You have power over your mind, he wrote, not outside events. But today's man has surrendered both. He lets a woman become the storm, the event, the god of his every emotional state. And worse, he thinks this is romance. So listen now, and listen like your future depends on it, because it does. There are 10 behaviors no man should ever tolerate from a woman, not because you're afraid of being alone, not because you're afraid of losing her, but because you refuse to lose yourself. And if you let these behaviors go unchecked, you are not a man in love. You are a man in chains. The first is mockery, the rolling of the eyes, the sarcastic cuts in front of friends, the public embarrassment she'll later dismiss as a joke. The woman who cannot speak of you with reverence should not speak to you at all. Aurelius said, "What injures the hive injures the bee, and what injures your image injures your soul." A man who allows his woman to humiliate him is not building a relationship. He is digging a grave for his confidence, one insult at a time. Second, chaos normalized. She is never at peace. Her moods rule the house. 1 minute she's warm, the next she's ice. Her anger is a blade and you are always bleeding. And yet, you've convinced yourself this is passion. It isn't. It's pathology. Nowhere can man find a quieter retreat than in his own soul, Marcus wrote. But the man who shares his bed with a hurricane will never retreat. He will only run from her, from himself, from the life he once dreamed of. Third, attention addiction. The woman who cannot survive without male validation. The one who posts more skin than thought, who measures her worth by likes and messages. She'll say it's empowerment, but if her value comes from the eyes of strangers, she will never value the man who sees her soul. Aurelius warned of chasing illusions. It is not death that a man should fear, he wrote, but never beginning to live. And the man who lives with a woman who worships the crowd never truly begins. He's a shadow beside a spotlight she reserves for herself. Fourth, sexual manipulation. She withholds to punish, gives to reward, uses intimacy not as love but as leverage. And you, craving warmth, crawl like a beggar to her throne. Marcus Aurelius taught self-mastery, detachment, the triumph of reason over impulse. But the man ruled by his lust is not a man. He is a slave, paying in dignity for moments of pleasure. Sex is not the problem. Her control of it is. And your obedience to that control is the real disease. Fifth, contempt for your purpose. She laughs at your goals, rolls her eyes at your discipline, interrupts your focus because she sees no value in your future unless it benefits her. This is not partnership. This is sabotage. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That is what Marcus wrote. But you cannot be one if every step forward is mocked by the one who walks beside you. The man who stays with a woman who scorns his mission will one day awaken in a life built for her and empty of himself. 5 down, 5 to go. And if even one of these sounds familiar, then this is not just a list, it's a mirror. You are bleeding, and it is not noble. It is not romantic. It is not sacrifice. It is self-destruction wearing perfume. Marcus Aurelius was not gentle, and neither is truth. Let's finish what we started. Sixth, the ghost of competition. She does not want to walk beside you. She wants to outshine you. Her words drip with comparison. Her victories must be louder than yours. Her success, her income, her followers, her status, they are not shared. They are weapons. And slowly, the man becomes a silhouette in his own home. Marcus Aurelius warned, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. And yet here she is, tying her value to outperforming the one who should be her protector, not her opponent. You are not her man, you are her mirror, and she will only love you when you reflect her superiority. Seventh, emotional manipulation disguised as trauma. Every mistake is excused by her past. Every act of coldness, every cruel word, every betrayal, explained by something she claims to be healing from. You are no longer a partner. You are her therapist, her punching bag, her confessional. She sins and you repent. And the more broken she claims to be, the more guilty you feel for needing love from her. Marcus said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." But this is not revenge. This is corruption. She is not healing. She is hijacking your empathy. And if you confuse your role as a man with that of a redeemer, you will be crucified by a woman who never intended to change. Eighth, entitlement without accountability. She expects more from you than she gives. She demands royalty, gives peasantry, and still insists she's the prize. Her gratitude is extinct. Her criticism is endless. You build and she evaluates. You sacrifice and she demands. You lead and she resists. Not because you lead poorly, but because submission to strength feels like loss to the ego that raised her. Marcus Aurelius would have seen it clearly. So other people hurt me? That's their problem. Their character and actions are not mine. But the man who lets a woman's ingratitude define his worth is no longer living by Stoic wisdom. He is drowning in someone else's self-importance. Ninth, boundary testing. The small lies, the late-night texts to friends, the disappearances, the photos she swore she wouldn't post. Not catastrophic betrayals, no. Just the slow drip of disloyalty. The woman who knows your limits and steps just past them to see if you'll flinch. Marcus said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. But if she does it, and you stay, what does that say about you? Every test you fail becomes a game she'll play, again and again and again, until your standard becomes fiction and your silence becomes permission." 10th, the erosion of respect, not through loud fights or dramatic scenes, but through the quiet absence of admiration. She no longer listens when you speak. She no longer looks when you enter. You are background noise in the house you built. She is not cruel, just indifferent. And this is the most violent betrayal of all, because a man can survive hate, but he cannot survive being ignored. When you arise in the morning, Marcus wrote, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. But what of the man who wakes beside a woman who sees no privilege in his presence? He stops rising, he starts fading. These are the 10, not opinions, not complaints, realities. Each one a doorway to the death of a man's purpose, one silent surrender at a time, and most will ignore them. Because the truth offends where lies seduce, but some, the rare, will listen. They will see that love without respect is slavery with a smile, and they will remember what Marcus Aurelius stood for: the discipline of mind, the rule of self, and the sacredness of peace. The illusions are now shattered. What remains is the man, raw, wounded, and one choice away from either becoming a tyrant over himself or a prisoner to others. Marcus Aurelius called this the battlefield of the soul. Let's enter it. Now that the 10 poisons have been named, the question is not whether a man has seen them, but whether he's tolerated them, because that is where the real tragedy begins, not in her behavior, but in his silence. The destruction of a man never starts with her. It starts with what he permits in the name of love. And every time he forgives what should have been walked away from, every time he explains away betrayal with soft logic, every time he bends his standards to keep her presence, he is not preserving the relationship, he is burying himself alive. Marcus Aurelius said, "A man should be upright, not kept upright." But that's the condition of millions of men today. They are kept upright by hope, by fantasies, by the memory of who she was in the beginning, but not the reality of who she has become. They build their days around trying not to upset her. They learn to read the weather in her eyes. They call it compromise. But it is not compromise, it is fear. It is emasculation. It is the slow suicide of sovereignty. There is no glory in being the emotionally bulletproof man who absorbs every wound. That is not strength. That is delusion shaped by desperation. Real strength is in refusal. in walking away without explanation, in choosing your sanity over her apology, in saying, "I do not need to burn just because she's cold." But that kind of strength can only come from stillness, from a man who sits with himself long enough to remember that he was whole before she arrived, and he will be whole long after she's gone. This is the moment Marcus meant when he said, "Don't waste what's left of your life speculating about others, unless it is for mutual benefit." And what mutual benefit is there in constantly analyzing her tone, decoding her moods, negotiating for basic decency? That is not love, that is surveillance. And the man who becomes a detective in his own relationship has already lost the case. But the worst cost is not psychological, it is spiritual. When a man tolerates what breaks him, his soul begins to rot, his eyes dim, his posture folds, his laughter disappears. He becomes a whisper. And still the world tells him to try harder, to communicate, to be more vulnerable, as if his suffering is his fault, as if he hasn't already bent himself into 1,000 shapes just to be enough for a woman who never wanted a man, only control. Marcus Aurelius would have called this what it is, a war of identity. And the only weapon is clarity, clarity that does not negotiate, that does not wait for more evidence, that does not need closure. A man who sees clearly will walk without anger, without hatred, without vengeance, just certainty. And that certainty will terrify her, because she was never afraid of losing him, only of losing her grip. There is more, because once a man sees, he must rebuild, and most don't know how. The world offers no blueprint for rebuilding a man after he has been drained by tolerance. But Marcus Aurelius left one. The rebuilding begins in silence, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of awakening. It is the silence of a man who stops chasing, stops explaining, stops trying to fix what was designed to break him. He stops negotiating with chaos. He stops apologizing for his boundaries. He stops bleeding for those who drink his pain like wine. This silence is not retreat. It is resurrection. Because for the first time, he is no longer reacting to her moods, her games, her rewrites of reality. He is watching, measuring, choosing. And from this stillness, power returns. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by betrayal, by politics, by death. And yet he wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water." That is the new man. Not louder, not crueler, but unshakable. He no longer moves to win her favor. He moves only in alignment with principle. He does not shout, he does not explain, he does not threaten, he acts. And when he acts, everything changes. The woman who once used silence to punish now finds his silence terrifying. The man who once folded to her tears now looks through them. The man who once apologized for wanting peace now demands it, not with words, but with the quiet finality of leaving a room and never returning. This is the man she never thought he'd become, not because he is cruel, but because he is awake, and she can no longer seduce a man who is conscious. This man has returned to the path Marcus Aurelius walked, the path of internal command. His mornings begin with discipline. His speech is slow, deliberate. His time is spent with purpose. He reads more than he scrolls. He builds more than he complains. He retreats into solitude not to sulk, but to sharpen. The world calls it cold, but the world does not understand kingship. And with time, the scars fade. The temptations dim. He no longer feels the urge to re-explain the past. He no longer fantasizes about her return, because he has seen the cost. He has touched the bottom, and once a man has rebuilt himself from ruin, he does not trade that empire to sit in another woman's audience. Marcus Aurelius asked one question every man must write on his mirror. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. That is the work. Not chasing, not pleasing, not arguing, but building and protecting, and returning to the sacred fire of self-mastery that no woman, no matter how beautiful, is worth extinguishing. This is where the wounds become weapons, where clarity becomes law, and where the man either returns to the throne or stays forever lost in the fog. Let us end as Marcus Aurelius would have, with fire, truth, and command. A man who remembers who he is becomes untouchable, not because he dominates others, but because he no longer submits to lies. He has walked through the illusion that love must hurt, that tolerance is strength, that being a good man means accepting every storm she brings. No more. The good man is not the weak man. He is the man who sees clearly and still chooses discipline over desire, distance over dysfunction, peace over performance. And now, he is dangerous, not to women, not to the world, but to the empire of manipulation that once fed on his confusion. Because clarity ruins the game. He no longer argues. He observes. He no longer chases. He chooses. He no longer tolerates what drains him, even if it comes dressed in beauty, memory, or need. Marcus Aurelius did not sit on the throne of Rome begging for approval. He ruled, "The happiness of your life," he said, "depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And so the man now guards his thoughts like a warrior. He lets no woman live rent-free in his mind, no memory control his future, no pain distort his mission. He understands this now, that not all love is good, that some women are architects of chaos, not by accident, but by design, and that to entertain their behavior, to excuse it, to forgive it endlessly, is not mercy. It is masochism, and the world may call him cold, bitter, closed off, but the world does not have to bleed every night in silence. He does, or did. Not anymore. Now he lives by the code of the Stoic, not numb, but sovereign, not hateful, but alert, not reactive, but awake. And should a woman enter his life again, she will feel the weight of his presence. She will sense the boundaries not as walls, but as monuments to a man who refused to break. She will know, this is not a man you play with. This is a man you honor, or leave, because he honors himself. That is the law now. That is the gospel. That is the kingdom rebuilt. And to every man listening, understand this. You were not born to suffer in silence. You were not born to explain yourself into exhaustion. You were not born to tolerate what dishonors your soul. You were born to command yourself, to protect your mind, to guard your fire. And when you do, the world changes. Not because it becomes easier, but because you become immovable. So remember Marcus Aurelius, not as a name, but as a mirror, because the emperor still speaks to every man ready to rise. And if this message woke something in you, like, share, subscribe, and support the channel through the link in the description, because millions of men are still asleep, and you, yes you, may be the reason they wake up.